The message came through on every frequency humanity could broadcast, and it was simple enough that even the youngest child on Earth could understand what it meant. The Galactic Council had denied Earth's petition for membership for the 14th time in 20 years, and this time they did not even bother to send a diplomatic explanation. The response was 3 words long, transmitted in cold, emotionless text: application status, rejected. No reasons given, no appeals offered, no future consideration promised. Earth was alone, and the galaxy wanted it that way. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of the orbital station above Earth, watching the blue planet turn slowly beneath her boots, and she felt the familiar weight of anger pressing down on her chest. She had been 12 years old when the first rejection came through, old enough to understand that the aliens who controlled the galaxy saw humanity as beneath them, too primitive to join their club of advanced civilizations. She had been 17 when pirates from the Krell Confederacy raided the mining colony on Titan and killed 300 people, including her older brother, and the Council had done nothing because Titan was not under their protection. She had been 23 when she joined the Terran Defense Force, determined to do something, anything, to make humanity stronger, and now she was 31 and standing in the middle of the biggest secret the human species had ever kept. Behind her, the door hissed open, and Director Marcus Hall stepped into the observation deck, his face lined with exhaustion and something that looked almost like satisfaction. He was 70 years old, a veteran of the First Contact Wars, and he had spent the last 15 years managing the project that would either save humanity or destroy it. He walked up beside Sarah and stared down at Earth, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. "They rejected us again," Sarah said finally, and her voice was flat, emotionless, because if she let any feeling into it she would start screaming and she would not be able to stop. Marcus nodded slowly. "I know. I saw the transmission an hour ago. The Council made sure every human settlement in the system received it at the same time. They wanted us to feel it, wanted us to understand that we are nothing to them." Sarah clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. "How much longer do we have to wait? How much longer do we let them treat us like animals?" Marcus turned to look at her, and there was something dangerous in his eyes, something sharp and cold and absolutely certain. "We don't wait anymore. Leviathan is ready. We launch in 72 hours. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat, and for a moment she could not breathe. Leviathan. The name alone was enough to make her hands shake, because she had spent the last 8 years of her life working on that ship, pouring every ounce of her skill and determination into making it real, and now it was finally going to fly. Leviathan was humanity's secret, a supercarrier built in the ice tunnels beneath Europa, hidden from the galaxy's prying eyes and constructed with technology that broke every regulation the Galactic Council had ever written. It was 5 kilometers long, armed with weapons that could crack a moon in half, powered by reactors that should not exist, and crewed by 15,000 men and women who had volunteered to become part of something impossible. The project had started in secret 20 years ago, when a group of engineers and military officers realized that Earth would never be accepted into the galactic community through diplomacy. They had stolen technology from crashed alien ships, reverse-engineered weapons from black market deals, and built entire factories in the outer solar system where no one would think to look. They had recruited the best and brightest from every nation on Earth, pulling together scientists and soldiers and dreamers who believed that humanity deserved better than to be ignored. And they had kept it all hidden, because if the Council ever found out what they were building, they would have sent fleets to destroy Earth before Leviathan could ever launch. Sarah had joined the project when she was 23, fresh out of the academy and hungry for a chance to make a difference. She had started as a junior engineer, working on the reactor shielding, and over the years she had climbed the ranks until she became one of the senior commanders responsible for the ship's tactical systems. She had lived on Europa for 8 years, sleeping in cramped quarters carved into the ice, eating recycled food, and working 18-hour shifts because there was always something that needed to be fixed, always another problem that needed to be solved. And now, finally, it was done. Leviathan was complete, and humanity was about to show the galaxy what it could do. 72 hours, Sarah repeated, and she felt a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. What's the target? Marcus pulled up a holographic display, and a star map appeared in the air between them, showing the inner systems of the Galactic Council's territory. A red marker blinked on the edge of human space, highlighting a fleet of ships moving toward Earth. The Vrex Dominion. They've been building a fleet for the past 6 months, and our intelligence says they're planning to launch an invasion within the week. They think Earth is defenseless, that we have nothing but outdated missiles and a handful of orbital platforms. They're going to come here expecting an easy victory, and we're going to show them how wrong they are. Sarah stared at the map, her mind racing through tactical calculations, weapons trajectories, shield configurations, and 100 other details that she had memorized over the years. The Vrex were one of the mid-tier powers in the galaxy, strong enough to bully smaller species but not powerful enough to challenge the Council directly. They had been raiding human colonies for years, taking resources and slaves and leaving nothing but wreckage behind, and Earth had never been able to stop them because humanity's fleet was too small, too weak, too outdated. But now everything was about to change. How many ships are they bringing? Sarah asked. 250, according to our scouts. Cruisers, destroyers, carrier groups. They're bringing everything they have because they want to make a statement. They want to show the galaxy that humanity is theirs to take. Sarah felt a cold, fierce joy spreading through her chest. Then we'll make a statement too. We'll show them what happens when you underestimate Earth. Marcus nodded, and for the first time in weeks, Sarah saw him smile. Get your crew ready, Commander. In 72 hours, Leviathan launches, and the galaxy is going to learn that humanity is done asking for permission. The Vrex fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system exactly when the intelligence reports said they would, and they came in with all the confidence of a predator that had never known defeat. Admiral Carvex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Talon of Dominion, and watched the blue planet appear on his view screen, small and defenseless and utterly insignificant. He had led fleets into battle for 30 years, had conquered 12 worlds and enslaved 6 species, and he knew exactly what Earth was worth. It was a resource world, nothing more, a planet full of primitive creatures who barely understood the technology they were using. The Galactic Council had refused to protect them, which meant they were free for the taking, and Carvex intended to take everything. All ships, maintain formation, Carvex ordered, his voice echoing across the fleet's communication channels. Prepare to engage orbital defenses. I want this over quickly. His officers moved efficiently across the bridge, and Carvex allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. This would be an easy victory, the kind that would earn him recognition from the Dominion's ruling council and perhaps even a promotion. Earth had no allies, no advanced weapons, no hope of survival. They would surrender within hours, and Carvex would return home with a new world under his control. But then something appeared on the scanners, something that should not have been there, and Carvex felt the first cold touch of uncertainty creeping into his mind. Admiral, his sensor officer said, and there was a tremor in her voice that Carvex had never heard before. We're detecting a massive energy signature near Europa. It's moving. Carvex frowned and stepped closer to the tactical display. What kind of energy signature? I don't know, sir. It's bigger than anything I've ever seen. The readings are off the scale. Whatever it is, it's generating enough power to run a planetary defense grid. Carvex felt his confidence waver, just slightly, and he forced himself to stay calm. Bring it up on the main screen. I want to see what we're dealing with. The view screen flickered, and then the image changed, and Carvex felt his breath catch in his throat. Rising from the icy surface of Europa was a ship, but calling it a ship felt like calling a star a candle. It was enormous, a massive construct of dark metal and angular lines, bristling with weapons arrays and shield emitters and launch bays that could hold entire fleets. It moved with terrible, deliberate grace, its engines burning with blue-white fire, and as it cleared Europa's atmosphere Carvex saw the name painted across its hull in letters 10 meters high, Leviathan. What is that? Carvex whispered, and for the first time in 30 years, he felt afraid. His tactical officer was frantically scanning the ship, and his voice was shaking when he spoke. Admiral, that ship is 5 kilometers long. Its weapons output is... I don't even know how to describe it. It's carrying enough firepower to destroy our entire fleet. And its shields. Admiral, those shields are stronger than anything the Council has ever built. Karvek stared at the screen, his mind racing, trying to understand what he was seeing. Earth was supposed to be weak. Earth was supposed to be defenseless. This ship, this impossible, terrifying ship, should not exist. And yet there it was, moving toward his fleet with the slow, inevitable certainty of a predator that knew it had already won. All ships, open fire. Karvek shouted, and his voice cracked with desperation. Destroy that ship before it reaches us. The Vrex fleet opened fire, and 250 ships unleashed everything they had, filling the space between them and Leviathan with missiles and plasma bolts and kinetic rounds. It was enough firepower to shatter a moon, enough to vaporize a city, and for a brief, hopeful moment Karvex thought it might be enough. But Leviathan's shields flared to life, a shimmering wall of energy that absorbed every shot without even flickering. The missiles exploded harmlessly against the barrier, the plasma bolts dissipated into nothing, and the kinetic rounds bounced off like pebbles thrown against a mountain. And then Leviathan fired back. The weapons arrays along Leviathan's hull lit up, and the darkness of space was filled with light. Rail guns fired projectiles that moved faster than the eye could follow, punching through Vrex shields like they were made of paper. Energy beams lanced out, cutting through hulls and reactors and leaving nothing but molten metal and expanding clouds of debris. Missile pods opened, and thousands of smart warheads streaked toward the Vrex fleet, each one finding its target with perfect, terrible precision. Karvex watched in horror as his fleet died around him. Ships that had taken years to build were torn apart in seconds, entire crews vaporized before they could even understand what was happening. He saw the Crimson Fawn break in half, saw the Shadow's Edge explode in a ball of fire, saw a dozen cruisers simply vanish as Leviathan's weapons found their reactors. And through it all, Leviathan kept coming, unstoppable and merciless, a force of nature that could not be reasoned with or escaped. Retreat! Karvex screamed, all thoughts of victory forgotten. All ships, retreat immediately. Jump to hyperspace, get out of here. But it was too late. Leviathan had already positioned itself between the Vrex fleet and their escape route, and now it opened fire with everything it had. The last thing Karvex saw before his ship's reactor exploded was Leviathan filling his view screen, massive and terrible and absolutely unstoppable, and then there was nothing but light and heat and the final, terrible realization that he had led his fleet to die against an enemy they never should have challenged. Aboard Leviathan, Commander Sarachan watched the last of the Vrex ships explode, and she felt a grim satisfaction settle into her bones. The battle had lasted 6 minutes from start to finish, and the Vrex fleet was gone, utterly destroyed, 250 ships reduced to wreckage and expanding clouds of debris. It was a victory beyond anything humanity had ever achieved, and it was only the beginning. All stations, report, Sarah ordered, and her voice was calm, professional, completely in control. Shields at 98%, the tactical officer reported. No hull damage. Weapons systems optimal. Reactors running at 40% capacity. We barely felt them, Commander. Sarah nodded. Good. Send a message to Earth. Tell them the Vrex fleet has been eliminated. Tell them Leviathan is operational and ready for the next phase. But even as she gave the order, Sarah knew that the real battle was just beginning. Because somewhere in the galaxy, the Galactic Council had just received word that Earth had built a supercarrier in secret, and they would not take that news lightly. They would see Leviathan as a threat, as a violation of every law they had ever written, and they would move to neutralize it. And when they came, humanity would have to decide whether to submit to the Council's authority or stand alone against the entire galaxy. Sarah looked out at the stars, at the infinite darkness stretching in every direction, and she felt a fierce, defiant pride burning in her chest. Humanity had been ignored for too long, dismissed and belittled and left to fend for itself. But now the galaxy would see what humans could do when they stopped asking for permission and started taking what they deserved. Now the galaxy would learn that Earth was done being weak. And if the Council wanted to stop them, they would have to go through Leviathan first. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of the Vrex fleet's destruction, and the chamber was filled with an energy that Ambassador Tala Reeves had never felt before. She sat in the human delegation seat, a position that had been granted as a courtesy years ago but that had never held any real power, and she watched as representatives from 300 species argued and shouted and demanded answers. Holographic displays showed the wreckage of the Vrex fleet, scattered across millions of kilometers of space, and in the center of every image was Leviathan, dark and massive and absolutely terrifying. The council speaker, a towering crystalline being named Crystallix from the Etheron Collective, raised its limbs for silence, and the chamber gradually quieted. When it spoke, its voice resonated through the translation systems, cold and absolutely furious. The human species has violated the Prohibited Technologies Act, the Fleet Limitation Treaty, and the Non-Aggression Accord. They have constructed a vessel of war that exceeds Council regulations by orders of magnitude, and they have used it to destroy a member fleet without provocation. This is an act of war against the Galactic Council itself. Tala stood, her legs shaking but her voice steady. The Vrex Dominion was planning to invade Earth. We defended ourselves against an unprovoked attack. That is not an act of war, that is self-defense, which is our right under galactic law. Crystallix turned its faceted head toward her, and Tala felt the weight of its attention like a physical thing. You defended yourselves with a weapon that should not exist. The technology aboard that ship is forbidden. The reactors alone violate 12 separate treaties. You have endangered the stability of the entire galaxy. We endangered nothing, Tala shot back, and she felt anger rising in her chest, hot and fierce and absolutely unstoppable. For 20 years, we begged this council for protection. For 20 years, we watched as our colonies were raided and our people were killed, and you did nothing. You rejected our applications for membership, you ignored our pleas for help, and you left us to die alone. So we built Leviathan, and we did it in secret because we knew that if you found out, you would destroy us before we could ever defend ourselves. Don't you dare stand there and call us criminals when you abandoned us first. The chamber erupted in chaos, species shouting in 100 different languages, and Tala stood in the middle of it all, her heart pounding, knowing that she had just said things that could never be taken back. But she did not care. She was done being polite, done being patient, done pretending that the council had humanity's best interests at heart. Crystallix raised its limbs again, and slowly the chamber quieted. The council will vote on the human question. All species in favor of immediate military action against Earth, signify now. Tala watched as the vote counters lit up, and her stomach twisted into knots. 217 species voted in favor of military action. 53 voted against. 30 abstained. It was not enough to authorize an invasion, but it was enough to authorize sanctions, blockades, and the seizure of human assets throughout Council space. The motion fails, Crystallix announced, and there was something almost like disappointment in its voice. However, the Council hereby authorizes the immediate seizure of the vessel known as Leviathan. Human forces are ordered to surrender the ship to Council authority within 72 hours, or face complete economic isolation and military blockade. This session is adjourned. Tala stood frozen as the chamber emptied around her, and she felt a cold, terrible certainty settling into her bones. The Council was afraid of Leviathan, afraid of what it represented, and they would not rest until they controlled it or destroyed it. And if Earth refused to hand over the ship, the Council would move to crush humanity with everything they had. She pulled out her communication device and sent an encrypted message to Director Hall on Europa. Council voted to seize Leviathan. We have 72 hours. What are our orders? The response came back within minutes, and it was exactly what Tala expected. Orders are simple. We do not surrender. Prepare for war. Back on Leviathan, Commander Sarah Chin stood in the main briefing room, surrounded by her senior officers, and she watched as Director Hall's message played on the main screen. The old man looked tired, but his voice was strong and absolutely certain. The Council has demanded that we surrender Leviathan, and I'm sure none of you are surprised. They're afraid of us, afraid of what we represent, and they want to take away the only thing that keeps us safe. But we are not going to let that happen. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. What are our orders, Director? Hall leaned forward, and there was fire in his eyes. We fight. We take Leviathan and we leave the solar system before the Council can send a fleet to stop us. We find allies, species that are tired of Council control, planets that want their freedom. We build a coalition, and we show the galaxy that there is another way, a way where species are not crushed under the Council's boot. And if the Council comes after us, we fight them too. One of the officers, a grizzled veteran named Captain Rodriguez, spoke up. Director, we're talking about going to war with the entire Galactic Council. They have thousands of ships, billions of soldiers. We have one ship, no matter how powerful it is. Hall nodded slowly. I know the odds, Captain. But we've beaten the odds before. We built Leviathan when everyone said it was impossible. We defeated the Vrex when they thought we were defenseless. And we will survive this too, because humanity does not give up, and we do not surrender. So I'm asking you now, all of you, are you with me? Sarah looked around the room, at the faces of men and women who had given everything to build this ship, who had sacrificed years of their lives to make humanity stronger, and she saw the same determination burning in every pair of eyes. They knew what they were being asked to do, knew the risks and the dangers, and they were willing to face it all because they believed in something bigger than themselves. We're with you, Sarah said, and her voice was steady and absolutely certain. All of us. We'll take Leviathan, and we'll show the galaxy what humanity can do. Hall smiled, and for a moment he looked years younger, the weight of command lifting from his shoulders. Then let's get to work. We launch in 24 hours. And when we do, the galaxy is going to change forever. Over the next day, Leviathan prepared for departure. Supplies were loaded, weapons systems were calibrated, and crew members said their goodbyes to loved ones back on Earth, knowing that they might never see them again. Sarah worked through the night, checking every system, every circuit, every line of code, making sure that Leviathan was ready for whatever the galaxy could throw at them. And when the final countdown began, she stood on the bridge beside Director Hall, watching as Europa's icy surface fell away beneath them, and she felt a sense of purpose that she had never known before. All stations report ready, the helm officer announced. Reactors at full power. Weapons armed. Shields at maximum. We are ready to jump. Hall looked at Sarah, and she saw pride in his eyes, pride and hope and absolute confidence. Commander Chen, take us out. Sarah turned to the helm officer and gave the order that would change everything. Engage hyperspace drive. Set course for the outer rim. Let's go find some friends. Leviathan's engines flared to life, and the massive supercarrier vanished into hyperspace, leaving the solar system behind and carrying with it the hopes and dreams of an entire species. Back on Earth, people watched the skies and wondered what would happen next, whether Leviathan would save them or doom them, whether humanity's defiance would lead to freedom or destruction. And across the galaxy, species that had been crushed under the Council's authority for centuries looked up at the stars and allowed themselves to hope, just for a moment, that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. In the depths of space, in a place where no Council ship had ever ventured, Leviathan emerged from hyperspace, and Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge and stared out at the unknown stars. They were alone, hunted by the most powerful organization in the galaxy, with no allies and no plan except to survive. But they had something the Council did not have, something that had carried humanity through every disaster and every war and every moment of darkness in their long history. They had hope. They had courage. And they had each other. And that, Sarah thought as Leviathan's sensors began scanning for potential allies, was going to be enough. Because humanity was done asking for permission. Humanity was done being weak. And if the galaxy wanted to stop them, they were going to have to catch them first. The rebellion had begun, and Leviathan was leading the way.